Hi everyone. Can you believe it? It's Friday, it's 5, and I'm actually doing Friday Live at 5 at 5. This week I wanted to do experiment using the wet paper again, but also using my normal process of then working wet onto dry paper and see if I can do something like that. And I thought this would be a good subject for that. This is, of course, Venice, Piazza San Marco by the canal there. This is the picture I posted. The camera can't quite get this. The light here is sort of like what I remembered. It's, let's see. It was Cinco de Mayo last year at 5:15 in the morning. And this is more of what the eye would see. I lightened this up so you could see the boats more, but that's not what the sky would have looked like. So I'm going to try to paint this kind of sky and water and this sort of illumination of the boats. So I'm going to try something a little different here. I'm going to try to do it on a piece of paper that is roughly the size of the iPad. So hopefully I'm zoomed in a bit more than normal, and hopefully the whole thing will be a bit more visible to you. So the first thing I have to do is get a big brush and wet both sides of the paper. This is 140-pound Stonehenge cold press. So I'm wetting the back generously. The table is at a 45-degree angle, so the water is running downhill. And now I'm going to stick the paper, so to speak, to the board and wet the front. And this usually flattens it out because the back curls a bit because one side is dry, the other side is wet. One side is expanded, the other side has not. So now that this side is also wet, it's expanded and flattened. Hi, Michael. Going to give it one last going over. Then I'm going to take the roll of paper towels and get the excess moisture off the front, which will then allow me to dry the area around it and apply tape. We hope, we hope. Not exactly accurate, but close enough for government work. So, as I've mentioned before, the holding of the paper is occurring at the four corners. We hope the holding of the paper is at the four corners. Goodness, what is this? Yeah, I know. So here we go. Now, you notice I didn't draw this. And I had debated whether or not I should draw it first. And then I thought, okay, probably that's not going to work. For the reason that when I do these washes, the blue to the yellower color, to the orangey color, down to the blue again, and so on, it could possibly migrate. So if I put in my horizon here and the orange was all the way down here, I'd be in trouble. So I'm just going to try and work with the situation as is as best I can. I'm going to get a biggish mop brush, the numbers, I believe it's either a 14 or a 16 squirrel mop, and I'm going to mix up some ultramarine. Now notice that paint is not running because I'm mindful of the fact that there's water here. We've created the situation where there's not a lot of water on the surface, but there is some underneath the surface, so it's going to move a bit. So this is very slow-moving paint. And then I'm going to mix up some orange. Well, now it's starting to run. Look at that. Perhaps it won't be what we need. We'll see. I'm going to put a bit of alizarin in that, I think, because it's a reddish orange. That's semi-runny. And then for this middle bit, I'm going to use good old standby yellow ochre. The, again, slow-ish moving. It's a little bit runny, but that's always the nail biting here. Blotting the brush, get a little more of that blue. Here we go. Well, all right, I'm going to do something I've seen other people do. This is kind of dangerous. Now, that's about the halfway mark. I know that you're not supposed to do that, but I want an orangey red. I'm going to put the reds in now. I know that looks probably kind of brownish. Then I'm going to put the yellow ochre in above that. And then I'm rinsing and blotting, and I'm going to put the blue in above that. Look at that. That's probably not painting past the tape so I don't get any little white shark's teeth. Hopefully not. Light touch, very light touch here. Very, very light touch. Now, underneath the red, I need kind of a violet blue. So I'm putting some alizarin into the ultramarine. And I'm not thinking about the lights and stuff over there. And this is going to look dark, I know. But let's make it lighter. We're working against white paper, so now I want to get reddish again here. There is some reddishness. So back to this pink. And it's wetter down here because the paper is on a 45-degree angle. And now I'm going back to my blue, and I'm going to be adding more blue as I go down. Get some of that red in there too. Stronger blue. I might even put a bit of neutral tint in that, just to keep it from being too fruity. Now, I'm getting some weirdness over here, but hopefully I can pass that off as something else. Rinsing that brush, blotting that brush. So my oranges and yellows, that's going to tell me where my water line or my horizon line is going to be. So if I'd have drawn that, I was afraid that possibly it would have migrated above or below where I wanted that to happen. So let's see. Maybe I should even squeeze my brush out and mop up any excess down here at the bottom. It's wetter down there, and I may dry it at this stage. All those lights, it looks like a excursion boat of some sort, almost like the ones on the Mississippi that we painted last week. Oh my gosh. The moon, that's going to have to go in with the gouache, and or the Jaune Brilliant watercolor. So this, I think I'm going to tilt, maybe to get a you know, and then I think I'm going to dry that. Now there's going to be some, I'm going to re-wet the areas, and I'm going to try to do something in here so that I get both soft and hard edges. So I'm trying to use some of the wet paper situation, some of the wet on dry situation. So we're going now to drying. So I need to mute here. Where's that? All right. The paper is dry now. We've got a little bit of nice glow here. I could draw now. I may do that. I'm going to have a much lower horizon, so I'm really going to have to make something of that moon. That means the water line, and I got nothing against using a ruler to get a level water line. Okay. These are things that I really should just paint. We're looking basically east. The boats are on slight diagonal here. Now, there's a boat coming in here, which is confusing because we're looking at the fronts of these. And, or is that the back? No, this is the front. These are the fronts of those. And then it's like the parking on the square in Washington. You've got cars parked facing each other. So This is the more modern section of Venice down there where they have the Biennale. It's a kind of a diagonal to these boats. Even though this is more or less center, compositionally, we've got other things creating asymmetry, even though that's kind of in the middle. We've got short, long. We've got short, long. This very irregular type shape, breaking that up so it doesn't become too regimented and too regular. So I'm going to assume post somewhere that my key, I'm thinking of this as the key vertical and that is the key horizontal. So just a general indicator of where the thing is. There's this boat comes almost all the way out. Again, these are things that I really probably should paint. And I'm just going to try to do this by eye. I want to preserve that this boat is going out. I'm going to preserve that shark tooth shape, this wedge shape, triangle shape, that knife shape, maybe a couple of lights in there. We'll see what we come up with. This back here is like a, you go to the beaches around here and they have those little, don't swim past their areas. I don't think that's what that was, but anyway, from here on out, we'll be working with, until I get into here, we're going to be working with fairly, and I'm going to go for the Oriental brushes now, because I'm going to thicker paint, so stiffer brush. Mixtures of well, okay, I'm going to have like a blue toned area over here and a warm toned area over here. So there were some lights from there's a hotel over here, I think, or a restaurant, and it was casting lights on this area here. So the boats are kind of cool darks, bluish darks, and the posts are somewhat reddish darks, so they're going to be quinacridone sienna with some ultramarine in it. And make lots. That's the thing you want to do, is you want to make lots. Lots and lots. Now the boats themselves are a glossy black. But I'm going to maybe put a little bit of neutral tint in that and a small amount of quinacridone sienna to get a bluish black. They're a glossy black paint, but it's so glossy that it reflects the blue from the sky. Now, what I do have to get, this lovely watermelon sky, which was more like that. I guess I'm going to wind up with this. The silhouette of Venice there. So let's put a little bit of red in that. And as I paint, I'm wetting the surface, which means I can go back in I'm going to get some of that excursion boat coming down here. I can come back with the other color and tip into that. So this is kind of like the paper was wet, the way I had wetted it, but in an isolated area. So I'm doing the situation that we started out with, but I'm doing it in an isolated way, in an isolated area. I want some warmth back there, but I want some darker areas as well. So that's where the neutral tint and the ultramarine blue are going to play in. It is, that boat is actually so similar to the one we painted from in Dubuque last week. Heck of a thing, how about that? Small world. So I'm keeping the darks to the tops of the buildings back there, and the sienna colors more towards the bottom there. Now, sienna, ultramarine blue, very slow moving. This is one of those Shakespeare strokes. "'Twere done, 'twere best done quickly." I'm going to try to execute this post. As I come down, I'm going to clean up the top edge. I'm going to get a bit more sienna in it. Again, here we go. This is almost creamy, thick, nearly acrylic-like consistency. Okay, here we go, John. "'Twere done, 'twere best done quickly." Okay. Spacing, it's critical. Lower. Thinner. Let's go to the blue now. Notice that's all the way down. This is further up. These are further up. There's a trio here, and I'm going to be very it's a quad group, okay? Now, into the ultramarine business, I need to start getting some boats. There's a let's keep this kind of blue, because I will go in darker. Let's put a little turquoise, a little cerulean in that to keep it from being too this guy. I might need to spray this a little, just to keep things with my spray bottle further away. Keep the mist on it. A very important one, I think, will be this one. Okay, more blue. See, I'm not mixing enough of this. But if we keep that surface wet, let's just work off of this. Okay. So there are these Nike swoop shapes. Well, let's see. I need to preserve that. Shape in there. And this shape. And, well, best I can. So, you could always say, I moved 2 feet this way, I moved 2 feet that way. And it was a different situation, right? So here we go. The more turquoise, because I want a different character of blue in this area, because I want to try and indicate that there's some sort of tonneau cover on these boats. And then I'm going to put the blacker, browner, the neutral tint and sienna in this part of it. Now there's the boat back here. Boat. I shouldn't call them boats. They're gondolas. Gosh, John. Figure it out. Stabbing right into my cerulean to get these tonneau covers on these boats. So it's very wet because I'm putting very wet paint on it. Now coming out, okay, let's get into the black. There, the neutral tint. I'm going to have a full range of values going here. Now I've also got some poles further out. So let's get this out here. Excuse me, pardon me while I cough. There are other poles. I'm not going to try and put them all straight because one, they weren't. And two, compositionally, better if they're not. So we're now working pretty stiff paint. So I've got one very close over here. Okay. Blotting and rinsing and blotting that brush. Going for the blue-black or the blue neutral tint mixture here. I'm going to try and refine some of these shapes. This is creamy acrylic, almost acrylic consistency paint. Trying to get my shapes. Remember, I'm leaving that boat out. I am going to have to put in that barrier of floats. I guess that's where they inform the boating public where the gondolas park. Now these, I'm going to take some orange and I'm going to plop right into this thick orange to try and get the look of the illuminated portion of some of these posts. There we go. I think that might be able to pass that off as that. This paint is, let me get the drawing of it. We're doing kind of this situation. There's a lot of very thick paint on the top, which is not yet dry. There's moisture underneath. We're somewhere between these two stages of the painting. There's some moisture on top, but not a lot. The pigment is not yet dry. And this will allow me to take a brush that I rinse, squeeze, to get the water out. And I can do some little light bits. Well, there needs to be some reflection from these things. Things. Post, John. What do you mean things? Okay. Perhaps a little more back here. Let's clean up some of those shapes, the tops. How about, let's see. I put a second boat. Out for the morning excursion here. Crowded as that city was, it was actually pretty sparse that time of the morning. But about an hour or so later, it got busy. About 7 o'clock, things would really pick up. So I'm putting some stiff, right out of the pocket, cobalt turquoise into that area there. Now there's all manner of other stuff, like this line across here. I think what I'd like to do though first is a little more finessing on the prow of the boat. So that it says Venice. And maybe a little more variation. Posts. Maybe I've talked about it in other contexts, but when you have verticals, strong verticals or strong horizontals, it's nice to modulate them somehow along their length, either modulate the value or modulate the hue or something along those lines. So I'm going to put some disturbed water lines in there. I'm just going to melt this into that. Can I get away with, yeah, some tie lines or that kind of thing? I do need a bit of a reflection underneath any boats that I do. little lines out there. I'm going to wait until all this is dry. Let's see. Yeah, let's make that a thicker post and let's have it enter the water about there. I'm going to get this fun brush. It's of a rigger of a type. It's my friend Carol gifted me this. It's a Fui Mui. I think that's how it's pronounced. But what you do is you load the belly of it, and that little pointy tip lets you make very thin lines. So we have a connecting to this one, a line like that, and then there's connecting to this one at a slightly higher point. We have a curved one. I don't know if I want to put that one. Should I? I'm going to run some extra lines in to make it look like these things are moored. And I think what I want to do now is get out the good old Jaune Brilliant #1 and #2 and start putting some what would be highlights or the illuminated areas back there. So I'm going to get a pointy brush, a nylon. This is a very small tube of the Jaune Brilliant #2. It's orangier, and this is the Jaune Brilliant #1, which is yellower. So squeezing it out and putting right into the tip. These are watercolors. They're not gouache per se. But there is titanium white in it. So I'm going to rinse that off. So that's the orangier version. This is the creamy, lighter version. How about the excursion boat over here? Well, that really needs it thick. Might have to go back when that's a little drier. I'm going to try to do our moon, but rather than put it here, I might put it there. Where do I want to put it? Moon over Venice. How romantic is that? Gosh. It's very illuminated in this area here. So, and then there's also some reflection of the lights in the water. And let's see, is there, yeah, there's, you know, I might have to go to some actual white to get some of these super bright ones. I suppose this boat would have some lights too. Yep. Ooh, you know what? We could also use our lavender. This one here. It's a very pale blue, and I could do some, I'm going to twirl the brush to get a point on it. Just some little accents like so. It too it has some titanium white in it. It's a basically ultramarine blue, titanium white, and I think ultramarine violet. But this will also be good for some disturbed watermarks. So I'm going to rinse that brush. I'm going to maybe peel the tape. Well, right away that tells me I'd like to do a little more something in here. And I think I need to get some darks. So I'm going to get the neutral tint. And yeah. Then rinse, blot, either the turquoise or the lavender or a bit of both. And I'm getting it right out of the pocket here. Try to indicate some of the creases in the tonneau cover of the boat. Or even a little detail on the front of that boat, gondola, I'm sorry. Rinse, blot. I think I want to get a little more orangey sienna, stiff orangey sienna, put in there. 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 Perhaps a bit more water and stuff we've been using, and just a few disturbed water lines. Okay. Sharpen up some of these shapes where I think it helps. Not all of them. If I make this one dark, it's going to help it appear ahead of that one. And where this one crosses the background, if I make it darker just there but not everywhere, it'll look like it's ahead of this. Let's do the same strategy here. Yep, that helps. So let's peel. Maybe we'll dry it. What do I want to do? Do I want to dry it? Well, let's peel this side. Decisions you have to make on the fly. Okay, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm kind of liking this. So I did want to experiment with how would I combine the ways that I paint. The wet on dry, when I need a very specific shape, versus the when I need a very soft shape, and I can use the wet paper technique. I think I want just a little bit more. The lavender there, I'm gonna make that boat apparent. Some of the blue-black, I want to refine that shape. A little curved decorative bit there. Yeah, the excursion boat definitely needs some brighter lights. So I think I'm going to have to go with the pure white gouache. Oh, thank you, Michael. Yeah, that time of morning, that's kind of the charm of what you see during those times. I'm going to have to put a little dark line through the middle of that when it's all completely dry. But, okay. I think I'm sort of getting there. Maybe I'd like a little bit more weirdness in that reflection there. And a little bit more oomph there. Yeah, I think I'm getting there. So, let's peel the top, see what we get. So the idea here is, had it been something where I did want to do some complex drawing, I would want to do all my drawing. Hi, Vicky. I would want to do the drawing before you wet the paper because it's just nearly impossible to get graphite to tell on a wet piece of paper. In that instance, when I'm doing this kind of sky, I think I might want to give myself a wider margin in the subject so that it doesn't migrate too much farther. I can see, oh, I didn't do that blue cloud bank. I think maybe the reason I didn't want to do that is I already had blue here, and blue, something blue, something blue. I wasn't quite sure about that. So it's tough to get that color. I got to experiment with my color mixes to get that watermelon peach delicious fruit color that the sky does. Sometimes this time of year too. But anyway, that's a workout that I was very anxious to try and make happen. I think I want a little bit of a dark line over here too. And what else could I? Some BS lines. There's some kind of tie gizmo here, nautical looking business. Very beautiful. And there's just, this part of the world, there's just so much to paint. Anyway, thank you, Vicki. Yeah, I think I probably just intuitively didn't want to do that. Always, we should obey our intuition, I think. I'm going to try and get a little more going on that, but maybe I should probably wait till it's dry before fully dry. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm still really enjoying this wet paper thing. I don't think I've sussed it out entirely, but I think it has definite uses for me. Patrick! Thank you for watching. Merci. Everyone stay safe, stay sane, pray for Ukraine, and peace out.